Final Fantasy XII's world of Ivalice was defined by its warmth, the Mediterranean sun, the bustling sand-swept bazaars of Rabanastre, and a regal orchestral score that felt like a political opera. But in 2009, behind closed doors, Square Enix was planning to plunge that world into a deep, permanent winter. And that was a result of the industry changing. Western RPGs like The Elder Scrolls and Mass Effect were really dominating the market at the time. And this meant Square Enix felt the pressure to modernize Final Fantasy. Their solution was an unprecedented experiment. They outsourced their most sacred setting to a Swedish developer, GRIN, and they wanted them to create a gritty, high-stakes sequel to Final Fantasy XII. It was a clash of creative philosophies from the start. A westernized Ivalice that promised a dark, brutal future for the franchise, only to be buried before a single snowflake could fall. This now cancelled Final Fantasy XII sequel was known as Fortress. Visually, Fortress was a huge step away from everything we knew about Ivalice. Gone were the bright blue and golds, replaced by a desaturated Norse landscape, a landscape of jagged stone and endless ice. The game took place in a never-before-seen northern region, centered entirely around one massive ancient stronghold. This wasn't just a hub world, the fortress itself was the protagonist's entire universe. In the process, GRIN utilized advanced environmental storytelling, where the harsh dynamic weather wasn't just a backdrop, it was a mechanic of the game. The wind and snow of the environment were meant to affect the player's movement and visibility, creating a survivalist atmosphere that felt more like a dark fantasy epic than a traditional JRPG. The heart of Fortress was a character study of a man burdened by his own legend. That man was Basch von Ronsenburg. Years after the events of Final Fantasy XII, we find Basch weary and weathered, finally taking center stage as the lead protagonist he was always meant to be. Now serving as Judge Gambrinth, Basch is a hero in exile, defending the northern borders while quite literally wearing the face of the brother who once betrayed him. The leaked sketches for this game show an older, bearded Basch, almost similar to the look of Logan in that X-Men or Wolverine film, just in the Final Fantasy universe. And he isn't just fighting for a kingdom anymore, he's fighting for his own soul, while struggling with the psychological weight of the armor that he wears, and the sins of the past that he can truly never outrun. Mechanically, Fortress was a genre-defying hybrid that really seemed from everything that we saw of it was going to be years ahead of its time. It wasn't just a hack and slash, it featured a strategic defense system. A system where you had to manage resources and command troops from the fortress walls in order to repel massive invading forces. But the real spectacle of this game wasn't the scale of it. The leaked assets revealed boss encounters that dwarfed anything that we had seen in the Final Fantasy series up to that point. Specifically, a castle-sized Malboros so enormous that it looked like a giant mountain of rot. Players would have to scale these Titanic-sized creatures in real time, blending traditional combat with high-stakes traversal of a game like Shadow of the Colossus. It was a vision of a AAA scale that the PS3 era was barely equipped to handle. One of the most fascinating deep cuts of this project was its sonic identity. GRIN didn't want a traditional orchestral score for this game. They wanted something that was really earthy and grounded. They hired Erik Rudvall, the master of Nyckelharpa, a traditional Swedish keyed fiddle, to lead this game's soundtrack. The result was a haunting folk-heavy sound. It was raw and human and moved away from the regal polish of Hitoshi Sakamoto's sound. The audio choice was meant to reflect a commoner's Ivalice, a world where magic was fading and the struggle for survival was visceral. It really signaled a shift towards the folk horror aesthetic, something that wouldn't become popular in mainstream gaming until a decade after this game was being worked on. Despite the innovation, the project known as Project Zero, aka this game, was doomed by corporate friction. Reportedly, Square Enix became ghosts during the development of this game, withholding payments and offering vague, contradictory feedback. The most infamous critique that we have seen get leaked out is that Square Enix said this game didn't feel like Final Fantasy, even despite GRIN following the exact color palettes and design documents provided for Final Fantasy XII. The financial and creative gridlock eventually pushed the studio into a death spiral. When GRIN finally filed for bankruptcy in 2009, they referenced this unreleased masterpiece as the final blow. It remains the cautionary tale of what happens when a publisher's fear of the Western market leads them to sabotage the exact developers that they hired to capture it. Looking back on this from 2026 now, Fortress feels less like a failed sequel and just more of where the series actually ended up going. The dark fantasy, political grit, and the focus on the massive boss encounters that we see in Final Fantasy XVI and Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers were all pioneered here in 2009. Fortress was exiled because it was right about the future, just 10 years too early for the company to accept it. While we'll never get to stand on those frozen ramparts as Basch von Ronsenburg, the ghosts of the fortress still haunt the halls of Ivalice, a reminder of the masterpiece that was lost to time and corporate hesitation. While I would have loved to see what GRIN was developing and making with this game, and I wish it would have actually come out so we could play it, like I said, everything we see here just really was Square Enix's true vision for where they wanted to take Final Fantasy, and honestly, we've seen that now with these games that have come out. This is exactly what they wanted all the way back in 2009. And I don't believe that Final Fantasy XVII will be a turn-based JRPG, but I think with Square meeting with the developers of Expedition 33, let's hope that's the case, and let's hope that we do get to see a more traditional Final Fantasy come back. But we do know that Square is all in on trying to appeal to the Western market and bring these action RPG fantasies to life. I want to know down below though if you were a fan of Final Fantasy XII and if you would have liked to of course play this Fortress game that GRIN was developing. And if you liked the video, then I'd definitely appreciate if you could give it a like, and if you're a fan of Final Fantasy, then definitely make sure to hit that subscribe button, as I have a lot of fun Final Fantasy content planned for the future, and I've been doing a lot of Final Fantasy retrospectives as of late, so if you want to see more of that, then definitely stay tuned because I have some other stuff planned. Thank you all so much for watching though, and I am out. Peace.